Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate on what is a day that will probably go down in history, certainly for the European Central Bank, unleashing what's called quantitative easing, massive bond buying. It's going to take place, the chair of the ECB said, over an 18-month period, and it'll be to the tune of 60 billion euros a month of sovereign debt that will be purchased. This in a bid to ward off deflation. Currently, the eurozone inflation rate standing at minus 0.2%. I want to thank Guntram Wolf for being with us in part one of our discussion. In part two, we are joined by France 24's business editor, Marcus Carlson. He is at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Joining us from Berlin, Markus Kerber, professor of political economy at Technische Universität, and John Palasson, former advisor to the French economy minister, Arnaud Montebourg. Now, the German chancellor in Davos warning that there can be no silver bullet or big bazooka out of Frankfurt, no matter what. Angela Merkel speaking before the announcement by Mario Draghi. She says quantitative easing in no way lets European states off the hook when it comes to painful reforms.
No matter what, I would say, no matter what sort of decision the ECB will take, we should not become diverted from the fact that we need to put, as politicians, the necessary framework conditions in place for recovery.
John Palasson, you agree?
Well, I was surprised by the intensity of the debate in the first part. What we should be worrying about now is the reaction of Germany to the compromise which should be made in the eurozone, because, as it was said, it's an incomplete monetary zone. It's a political construction, and that's what it should be. And therefore, there will be important negotiations ahead. Structural reforms are being carried out, but there are other problems. That recipe is not working. We're not in a good economic situation. I'd just like to quote what Larry Summers, the former advisor to Bill Clinton, what he said in Davos. He said, QE is not a magical solution, and the issue is for that money to go into the real economy. And he said that the problem of Europe is our belt-tightening policies. It's to say that what Europe certainly needs is a mixed policy, a mixed compromise. And he used that image to describe the situation of Germany. If everybody is sitting down in an audience, but one person stands up, that person can see very well. But if everybody stands up, nobody can see anything. It's to say the German policy worked for Germany as long as Germany carried it out on its own as a strong exporting country. But the eurozone, as a group of countries, must try to find the correct the correct policy. For the entire zone. It's to say for the southern countries, but also for the exporting countries such as Germany. But it's a balance. The euro is not the Deutsche Mark, and there must be a negotiation, even more after Sunday's vote.
All right, the conversation's, by the way, not just between Germans. Ahead of the announcement, France's finance minister getting a little feisty over Germany's misgivings when it comes to sharing the risk.
The ECB is behaving as it should by putting measures in place.
The Germans aren't happy.
The Germans taught us to respect the independence of the European Central Bank. They need to remember that themselves.
Your reaction to that, Marcus Carlson. Would it be better if the ECB board members weren't listed by nationality?
Well, perhaps. I mean, certainly there are some tensions in the ECB board between the German board member, in particular Jens Weidmann, the head of the Bundesbank, and all of the others. We've been getting those reports time and time again throughout the past few months. Every time there has been mentioning of quantitative easing, it seems as if Jens Weidmann has said, no, we shouldn't go there, whereas the rest of the governing board or the governing council within the European Central Bank have said, no, we probably should go there. So it seems as if there is a clear tension there within the board of the ECB. And I can also tell you that there is a clear tension here in Davos, because to a certain extent, it's been everybody against Angela so far this week when it comes to the issue of quantitative easing, because I've been hearing time and time again that the Germans, to a certain extent, just have to bite the bullet, seeing where inflation is now in the eurozone and seeing that there is this real risk of deflation. The message has been from several economists I've been speaking to, from several business leaders, that this is something that is just needed. And if anything, it is actually coming too late, this QE program that the ECB has come out with.
We're coming too late, and a sentiment of all against Germany. Is that what you're saying, Marcus?
Pretty much, pretty much.
Sorry, that's Marcus Carlson. We have two Marcuses. Marcus Kerber in Berlin. Your thoughts on that? And on the remarks of the French finance minister.
The remarks on the French Prime Minister are really funny. The first time I have heard a French Prime Minister invoking the independence of a central bank when it is convenient to France to transfer risk from the French budget to a mutual institution. Well, I think we have to face the situation as it is. It's not Germany on her own. It's Germany, Finland, Austria to a less degree, the Netherlands, and to a certain degree as well Luxembourg. And the split in the board is as well, can be seen as well in the board of directors. Frau Lautenschläger, Yves Mersch defend a more or less German concept of monetary policy, and the rest, in particular the southern countries, are against. So Germany is clearly in a diaspora, but Germany is not on her own. And as a matter of fact, in the preceding debate, a very clear and lucid remark was made. This is the first step, and is aimed to be the first step of a mutualization of debt. And it starts by a compromise, because other countries like France and Italy would have tried to put more debt on the level of the ECB to let Germany take a share of about 25%. This is a behavior totally incompatible with the idea of the founders of the European Monetary Union, and it is a way to reduce Germany, a nation, a proud nation, to a GDP. Nothing but a GDP, nothing but a balance sheet, to the detriment of which foreign debt can be put on. And this is something not only Mr. Weidmann will fight. Mr. Weidmann is backed by the vast majority of the German people. I would say 80% of the Germans are against these measures or look at them with great skeptical eyes. There are some economists, as there are always. There are mercenaries like Mr. Guntram Bulff, who with a German passport serves French interests in a Brussels institution. I don't mind about that. But this is a very important political split-up of ECB, and the Germans have understood that ECB is no longer a European institution where Germany has as much say as its weight, but where Germany undergoes an operation.
The markets certainly liked it. Excuse me, but Marcus Kerber, the German DAX hitting a 7-year high this Thursday. So some Germans are happy.
There are a lot of international traders in equities who are extremely happy about this. If you talk to the managers of funds outside or inside of Germany, they have been extremely happy with Mr. Draghi's policy for the last years, because he has made their profits. This is the devil's pact between Draghi and the markets, and this reveals to the Germans that the unique profiteers of ECB policy for the time being have been the traders of the markets, but not the real economy they pretend to work for. The real economy has not received the liquidity pumped into the market, and those companies who are well off, they can finance their investments without the slightest difficulty. The Germans are no longer willing to buy the story of deflation. The Germans are no longer to buy the story of ECB being an independent institution. It is a very, very historic day, and it's, again, I say this, the beginning of the end of the eurozone and its singleness. There is no single eurozone. There is an enormous split, and we have to draw conclusions from that as soon as possible. Otherwise, the system will collapse, and with it, the European idea, the wonderful idea of European integration, will die as soon as that.
All right, some people predicting it's the beginning of the end, as you just heard, of the euro. Others saying that this is a momentous day for bringing Europeans closer together. Those that are giddy, their enthusiasm may be curbed sooner than later. On Sunday, the Greeks vote. The far left no longer says it wants to leave the euro, but Syriza party leader Alex Tsipras, who's tipped, by the way, to win that snap election, definitely wants a renegotiation.
Το μήνυμα του ελληνικού λαού.
The message of the Greek people in Syriza to the people of Northern Europe who have had to put their hands in their pockets is that we don't want any more loans. We want a viable solution so we can return what you gave us, not for it to go into a black hole, which unfortunately is where it went, and at the same time to bring Greece back to growth.
John Pallison, you heard Marcus Kerber mentioning this widening rift between Northern and Southern Europe. Is Alex Tsipras making Marcus Kerber's point in a way?
Well, because the decision of the independent institution does not fit the Germans' preference, suddenly we're going towards the explosion of the eurozone. The country, the nation, the proud nation which was reduced to its GDP, it wasn't Germany, it was Greece, and it has been Greece for several years. The revenue has been cut by 30%, the debt has exploded, and the situation is terrible there. So now what will be from a political point of view, very interesting, is how will the political leaders, who I hope will not speak in terms of mercenaries and in the pessimistic tone we heard just before, but in a reasonable way, how will those leaders and how will Germany react to the result of what will be the will of the Greek people on Sunday? Because that is the real base of Europe. It's that political faith in democracy and the ability of those nations to reach a compromise.
So talk us through it. And it's looking likely that it will be Alex Tsipras and the far left that will form that coalition. What do you think is going to happen after that?
I think that Mr. Tsipras, if he wins, which is not done because it's a very uncertain situation, will come to the table and negotiate. And there we'll see if Europe as a political entity will be able to reach a compromise. And maybe France will have a special part to play. Why? Because it's in an economic situation between the southern states and the northern states, and therefore it understands the balance between the objectives. But the major issue politically, because the world is in different parts, is going through a terrible period of political uncertainty. Will Europe be able to go beyond those national positions, such as the one we heard expressed just before, to find a more balanced policy and respect the vote? In the past years in France, it was criticized, for example, when not much the result of the 2005 referendum wasn't taken into account by
when the EU constitution was rejected.
Exactly. There was that strong feeling that democracy was becoming an empty concept because even though the people voted, there was no consequence. And that's terrible because it fuels extremist votes, and that's what brings real dissent inside the Union. We'll see, and it's a very important moment, and we all hope that the leaders will act responsibly. I hope the Greek vote will be respected.
All right, Marcus Carlson, tell us a bit about the buzz in Davos on this. What's concentrating the minds more? Is it that big announcement today out of Frankfurt, or is it Sunday's election in Greece?
I would say it's definitely today's big announcement from the European Central Bank in Frankfurt, because when I've been speaking to people here, once again, the feeling has been that economists and analysts, they expect that there will be some sort of deal when it comes to Greece. If Alexis Tsipras wins Sunday's election, it seems as if the sentiment here is that the eurozone once again will muddle through and that there will be some sort of compromise deal. For instance, we've been hearing from the Finnish Prime Minister Alexander Stubb here today, this Thursday in Davos. He has previously said that no way, we will not negotiate, we will not agree to in any way, shape or form cut down or reduce Greece's debts. Today, though, we got a little bit more of a milder tone from the Finnish Prime Minister. He still says that it will be very difficult for Finland to agree to a deal to cut down or reduce Greek debts, but he opens the door a little bit when he says that it will be very difficult, but he doesn't say that it's impossible. So perhaps we're seeing a little bit of an opening there.
Marcus, why the softening of that stance on the part of, say, the Finnish Prime Minister?
I think people are just sort of facing up to reality. Alexis Tsipras and the Syriza party, they are likely to become the biggest party in Greece on Sunday. According to the opinion polls, then the Eurozone has a choice. Does it want Greece to stay in, or does it want Greece to leave? And I think there seems to be a growing understanding that if the Eurozone wants Greece to stay in, there are going to have to be some sort of concessions. The question is how big those concessions are going to be. Alexis Tsipras, he's talked about cutting down or reducing Greek debts by as much as 30 or 40%. I would say that is one step too far. The rest of the Eurozone, from what I gather, would not be able to go that far. But perhaps there will be some sort of compromise deal nonetheless, because the option is, does Greece stay in or doesn't it?
Marcus Kerber.
Could I perhaps make just one comment on these very interesting issues? The first is that I would like to disappoint our French friend John when he said that the Germans want to intervene in the Greek elections. This is a total fallacy, my friend. I have great respect for the Greek people. I have great admiration for the enormous sacrifices of a wrong policy imposed upon a country which does not fit and which will never fit in the Eurozone. And I fully respect the result of the elections ahead of us, because sovereignty and dignity go always together. They go hand in hand. But I invite our French friend to accept and respect the dignity and the sovereignty of the German people, part of the club of creditors who have kept Greece so far alive. So there is no, and there will be no debate on any compromises on the debt situation of Greece. And if the Greek people votes in favor of, let's say, a government which tries to renegotiate the debt, then the Greek people should be aware of the consequences, that there is an opt-out option for the Greek. And I would say that the Eurozone and Greece would both win if Greek leaves, but I don't give any recommendation. This is the free choice. The second point, which I think is very important, if ever a country having received funds of that size like Greece, after committing so many blunders and not doing its homework over the years, again wants to reduce debt, irrespective of whether it's Greece or another country, that would create a moral hazard, which would make any re-engineering of debt in any comparable case impossible. So if the international financial community has not lost its senses and has kept a minimum of common sense, it will not and will never negotiate with a country where we have already made a very important step in giving up debt, and where about 75% of Greek debt with its public creditors, who can only give up the debt to the detriment of the taxpayer. So I think those who make an appeal to international responsibility, like our French friend apparently does, they should keep that in mind. Otherwise, they don't understand the dramatic character of the situation ahead of us.
All right, so disagreements on whether or not there will be negotiations after that Greek election, that snap election that takes place on Sunday. Before we go, and I'll put it to you first, John Pallison, you were talking about the long term now. Are there going to be more Lithuanias, countries that are pining to join the single currency, or again, getting back to the words that Marcus Kerber used at the outset, is it the beginning of the end? Are there irreconcilable differences?
Well, the French people several times voted in favor of the European Union because they believe it's the future. And we want to keep the euro as a common good. We don't want Greece to leave that group, because it's not only about Greece. It's about our ability to find a compromise. And I disagree, of course, with my German friend. I think there will be a negotiation, and I think Greece has done, as he says with a bit of contempt, its homework. The homework my German friend is talking about, it's a dramatic fall in the life of ordinary people who are going to vote on Sunday.
Living standards.
I mean, living standards, I'm sorry. I mean, we can't talk about homework here. And there will be a negotiation, and we believe in Europe, and it will be built. It will become stronger, because it will go through this difficult moment.
All right, you think it's going to go stronger. A final word on all of this from Marcus Carlson at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Looking ahead, we got every year we're talking about Europe's anemic growth. Does today's big announcements mean that there's light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, perhaps. We're going to have to wait and see. I think what a lot of people here say is that this could provide a confidence boost, and a confidence boost is what the eurozone is in need of at this stage. There's not enough investment, there's not enough bank lending, and in order to basically kickstart both investment and bank lending, there needs to be a confidence boost, and that is what people here are hoping, that this will provide that confidence boost. Whether or not it will actually add enough liquidity at the end of the day in 6 months, a year's time to the markets, well, that remains to be seen. But the hope here is that this is a confidence boost at the end of the day.
Marcus Carlson, I want to thank you for joining us from Davos. I want to thank Marcus Kerber for being with us from Berlin. Part one of our discussion, we had Gudtram Wolf from Brussels, and John Pallison. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate. Stay with us because our Media Watch segment is next. Now, 24 hours ago at this time, we were debating in this very studio this concept of a social apartheid that the French Prime Minister put forth. Well, I turn now to James Creedon in our Media Watch segment. It's, as we say in the trade, a story that's got legs on it.
Absolutely, Francois. It's the political expression, I think, that is dominating the French political discussion this week, first uttered on Tuesday by the French Prime Minister. There's been a lot of reaction all week. So just to remind viewers, ethnic apartheid exists in France. This was Manuel Valls. He said that there is a geographic, social and ethnic apartheid present in the society. And this was partly used to explain the context of France's recent terrorist attacks. It has been described as one of the most stark indictments of French society by a government figure, especially because France doesn't collect ethnic or religious statistics, yet they form such a big part of the political discourse. So I think a lot of people are just saying he's calling out a reality. But just one or two reactions to show you how divisive it's been. A member of the Socialist Party saying that this is a legitimate, strong and powerful term to use. That's a headline in Le Monde. Meanwhile, a UMP deputy saying on Twitter, to speak of apartheid in the suburbs is reducing terrorism. After national unity, this is national self-flagellation.
All right, and I noticed that it's sparked a slanging match between the Prime Minister and former President Nicolas Sarkozy.
That's right. He appeared on the main evening news on the France 2 network yesterday evening, and he responded in part to this, to Manuel Valls' use of the word apartheid, saying it is an error and that he was troubled by the use of this expression. He also said that the climate of national unity, which was suggested initially by François Hollande after these attacks, had been useful and indeed indispensable, but he used it in the past tense. He said it had been useful, so many people saying, so is national unity now over already, just a week or two later? Indeed, Manuel Valls replied to Nicolas Sarkozy today, and he said that politics needs to be grand, not petty. At a time like this, he accused the former president of breaking the spirit of national unity, and he said that using the term apartheid was simply describing a real situation, and that the error that Nicolas Sarkozy spoke about is not to have the courage to describe such a situation, whatever the words used. So it's certainly a battle of, what would you say, semantics between the former president and the Prime Minister.
Now, whether you like Rupert Murdoch, right, you got to hand it to the guy because his media empire knows how to own a news cycle.
They certainly do. Apartheid and then no-go zones. Some people saying aren't the
it was Fox News, right, that put this no-go zone concept out there.
That's right. They came under fire for listing areas in Paris that were claimed to be no-go zones. Just 10 minutes from the Eiffel Tower, you have places that you cannot go at all. The police can't even go in there. That was put out on its airwaves. So The local, it's, you know, then you had the Paris mayor saying that she would sue the network for...
And an apology.
And they apologized, and the Paris mayor then said, well, that doesn't matter, we're still going to sue you. Anyway, the local newspaper has come up with 10 real no-go zones in Paris, but they admit that this is more don't go than no-go. So just to scroll down, Francois, you've got the roundabout at the Arc de Triomphe. You've got the Eiffel Tower on a Saturday afternoon, terraces of a Parisian cafe which are overpriced, the metro on a summer's day, the Gare du Nord station after dark, public toilets, but I think that applies to most cities, really. And the nightclubs around the Champs-Élysées, I think that's probably true. And the Bois de Boulogne at night, Francois. I'm not sure any of us would want to venture there.
Okay. James Creedon, I want to thank you. I guess we'll talk about the return of the page 3 girl in the Sun
That's
later.
right.
Another Rupert Murdoch
There's not much more
publication.
to say on it. She's back already.
All right. James Creedon, many thanks. I want to thank our panelists once again, and thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.